I am Audrey Harrison, 32 years old, and tonight my Wall Street success finally collides with my past. My hands trembled as I remembered my father's cruel words slicing through the air years ago, "Useless girl, never the bright one." Now I sit in my luxury car outside my childhood home, gripping my keys tightly. The $15 million secret I have kept is about to shatter their perfect family portrait. Dad's 60th birthday party seems the perfect stage for truth, especially with my brother, their golden child, watching. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit like and subscribe to join me on this journey of redemption. Growing up in Wellesley, an upper-middle-class suburb of Boston, meant perfectly manicured lawns, competitive parents, and expectations higher than the property taxes. Our brick colonial stood as a testament to academic success, largely because of my father, Thomas Harrison, a tenured economics professor at a prestigious university. His rigid academic standards shaped our home life as thoroughly as they did his classroom. My mother, Eleanor, had once been a passionate art teacher with her own small gallery showings, but gradually she gave up her career to support my father's precinct. Each sacrifice seemed small at first, turning down a showing to attend his faculty dinner, postponing her summer art program to accommodate his research schedule. By the time I was in elementary school, her studio in the basement gathered dust, and her conversations increasingly centered on my father's latest publication or award. Then there was my brother Andrew, 2 years older and blessed with the kind of natural academic brilliance that made multiple choice tests seem like child's play. He absorbed information like a sponge, regurgitated it perfectly on command, and received the adoration of our father with each report card. The golden child who wore bronze indeed, because despite his academic success, Andrew's eyes always held a sadness I would only understand years later. I showed signs of intelligence early, but not the kind my father valued. While Andrew memorized state capitals and multiplication tables, I learned to read body language, developed creative solutions to neighborhood problems, and showed an uncanny ability to mediate disputes among friends. My kindergarten teacher noted my exceptional emotional intelligence during a parent-teacher conference. My father responded by asking if she had any concerns about my basic math skills. I still remember that first day of 4th grade, clutching my math test with nervous fingers as I walked through our front door. A B+ stared back at me, the highest math grade I had ever received after struggling through 3 years of anxiety and extra tutoring. Pride bubbled in my chest as I imagined my father's reaction. Maybe this would be the day he would look at me the way he looked at Andrew. Dad, look what I got on my math test," I called out, racing into his home office where he sat reviewing papers. He glanced up his glasses, perched low on his nose, and took the paper. B+. "Well, that is better than your usual work, Audrey." For one golden moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Then Andrew walked in, casually dropping his own math test on the desk. Mr. Peters said I was the only one to get the bonus question right. My father's entire demeanor transformed, his eyes lighting up as he examined my brother's A+. "Exceptional work, Andrew. This is the kind of natural talent that will take you places." Then came the comparison that would become the soundtrack of my childhood. "Why cannot you be more like your brother Audrey?" My mother stood in the doorway, witnessing the exchange. Our eyes met, and I saw the flash of pain in hers. But instead of speaking up, she simply squeezed my hand under the dinner table that night as my father spent 20 minutes dissecting Andrew's academic achievements. The pattern established itself throughout elementary school. Andrew brought home perfect marks and received books, special dinners, and endless praise. I brought home a mixture of grades, excelling in reading and social studies, but struggling with math and science, and received helpful suggestions about studying harder. The science fair in 6th grade stands out painfully in my memory. I had created a project examining how different music affected plant growth, meticulously tracking results, and developing a hypothesis about sound vibrations and cellular development that went beyond the typical 6th grade understanding. Andrew had created a textbook perfect volcano, the same project thousands of students had done before. His erupted on cue. He took first place. Your project was too subjective, Audrey, my father explained as we drove home, my participation ribbon mocking me from the back seat, while Andrew's blue ribbon sat prominently on the dashboard. Science requires precision and adherence to established principles. Your methodology was creative, but flawed. What he never realized was that I had found my own academic interest. At 12, I discovered the financial section of the newspaper he left scattered on the kitchen table each morning. While the words initially seemed like a foreign language, something about the patterns and predictions fascinated me. I began tracking stocks mentioned in articles, creating my own paper portfolio in a notebook hidden under my mattress. One morning at breakfast, I made the mistake of sharing my first prediction. Dad, I think that technology company you mentioned yesterday is going to increase in value. Their new product solves a problem people do not even know they have yet. He lowered his newspaper just enough to look at me with amusement. And what would you know about market analysis, Audrey? I have been reading the financial section, and I noticed that whenever companies develop solutions to invisible problems, their stock usually rises within 6 months. When my prediction proved accurate 3 months later, the stock rising 20% after their product announcement, I eagerly showed him the newspaper. Lucky guess, he said before turning to quiz Andrew about his debate club preparation. That moment taught me something valuable. My father would never see what he was not looking for. So I stopped seeking his approval and started developing my financial understanding in private. High school brought new challenges and deeper wounds. I found my academic niche in economics class, where concepts that baffled other students seemed intuitive to me. I could look at market trends and see patterns, connections that others missed between seemingly unrelated events. But chemistry continued to confuse me. Literature analysis felt subjective and frustrating, and the B's and occasional C's on my report card ensured I remained the academic disappointment at home. Meanwhile, Andrew flourished. He became valedictorian captain of the debate team and president of the Honor Society. My father attended every debate competition, sitting front row and beaming with unrestrained pride as Andrew dismantled opposing arguments with surgical precision. The trophy shelf in our living room grew crowded with Andrew's achievements, while my economics competition certificate lay buried in my desk drawer. My economics teacher, Mr. Hamilton, was the first to recognize my unique insight. After I accurately predicted a market shift for our class simulation that resulted in my virtual portfolio outperforming everyone else's by a significant margin, he pulled me aside. Audrey, you have a natural talent for market analysis that I rarely see even in undergraduate students. Have you considered pursuing economics in college? His words were the first academic validation I had received, and they lit a fire inside me. With his encouragement, I started a small investment club at school. 6 of us pooled our allowance and part-time job money, creating a modest fund of $3,000 that I managed based on my market research. By the end of the school year, we had increased our capital by 30%, enough to draw attention from the school newspaper, but not enough to impress my father. The defining moment came during my junior year. Andrew had reached the state finals for debate, scheduled the same weekend as the regional economics competition where I would be representing our school. Without hesitation, my parents chose to attend Andrew's event. He is competing at the state level, Audrey, my mother explained gently. This is important for his college applications. I won first place at the economics competition. When I called home with the news, my mother answered and offered congratulations before quickly returning to her detailed account of Andrew's second-place finish at the debate tournament. My trophy joined my certificate in the desk drawer. College application season brought the tension to a breaking point. Andrew received acceptance letters from Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, each one displayed proudly on the refrigerator. I applied to 7 schools, including my father's alma mater, hoping my strong economics grades and competition wins might finally earn his approval. The rejection letter from his university arrived on a Tuesday. Despite my above-average grades and exceptional economics performance, I had not made the cut. I hid the letter in my room, but somehow my father found out, perhaps from a colleague on the admissions committee. That night at dinner, he cleared his throat as my mother served pot roast, Andrew conspicuously absent at a study group. I heard you were rejected by my university today. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Yes. But I still have other options. State University has a good business program, and they offered me a partial scholarship. He scoffed, cutting his meat with precise movements. State University accepts anyone with a pulse. Their business program is mediocre at best. Their finance track is actually highly rated. I countered, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Let us be realistic, Audrey. You will never be the bright one in this family. Andrew has the academic potential to make something of himself. You should consider a practical degree that plays to your strengths, perhaps something in social work or elementary education. The words hit like physical blows. I excused myself from the table and fled to my room, tears burning tracks down my cheeks. Later, my mother knocked softly and entered without waiting for a response. Your father means well, she said, perching awkwardly on the edge of my bed. He just wants you to have realistic expectations. He wants me to know I am a disappointment, I corrected, my voice flat. She had no response to that truth, simply patting my hand before leaving. The next morning, I informed my parents I would be attending State University's business program in the fall. My father's response was immediate and cold. I will not waste money on a school that accepts anyone. If that is your choice, you can finance it yourself. That summer, I worked at a local bank as a teller. The branch manager, Mrs. Jenkins, noticed my skill with numbers and my interest in the financial magazines I read during breaks. She began teaching me about personal finance during slow periods, showing me how the banking system operated from the inside. You have a good mind for this work, she told me one afternoon. Most people see numbers. You see possibilities. The night before I left for college, my mother slipped into my room and pressed an envelope into my hand. Inside was $5,000, nearly her entire personal savings. I believe in you, she whispered, hugging me tightly. Show them what you can do. I left home the next morning with her money, my own savings from the bank job, and a determination to prove my father wrong that burned brighter than any academic passion ever could. Arriving at State University felt like stepping into freedom. For the first time, no one compared me to Andrew. No one had preconceived notions about my intelligence or potential. The campus sprawled across 100-acre-old brick buildings, mingling with modern structures, all of it representing possibility. My roommate Jasmine was everything I needed without knowing it. A communications major with bright purple hair and an infectious laugh, she accepted me immediately and completely. Girl, who cares what your family thinks, she said one night after I confessed my father's words over cheap pizza in our dorm room. College is where you figure out who you are, not who they want you to be. Financial reality meant working 3 jobs while maintaining a full course load. Mornings in the campus library, evenings waitressing at a local restaurant, and weekends as a virtual assistant for an investment blog. Every dollar went toward tuition, books, or my growing investment fund. My first finance class introduced me to Professor Diana Carson, a former Wall Street analyst who had left the high-pressure world to teach. While other professors lectured from textbooks, she brought real-world scenarios and challenged us to think beyond conventional wisdom. After I questioned one of her assertions about market behavior during class, citing 3 recent examples that contradicted traditional theory, she asked me to stay after class. Most students just accept what I say because it is in the textbook, she said, studying me with sharp eyes. You actually analyze and verify. That is rare. She became my mentor, recognizing that my approach to financial analysis differed from traditional methods. While other students focused exclusively on balance sheets and historical performance, I incorporated social trends, technological developments, and cultural shifts into my market predictions. You have an unconventional mind, Audrey, Professor Carson told me during my junior year. You see connections others miss because you look beyond the numbers. That is both a gift and a liability in this field. My first real investment came from the $2,000 I had saved from my campus jobs. Against conventional advice, I invested in a tech startup that specialized in social media analytics, a company most analysts overlooked because of its modest beginning and unconventional business model. Within 8 months, my investment had tripled in value as larger corporations began recognizing the value of social media data. That $6,000 paid for my next semester's tuition and validated my approach. Throughout college, I built a small but growing portfolio, reinvesting profits, and adding whatever I could save from my jobs. Professor Carson introduced me to investment literature not covered in our courses, and I spent hours analyzing market patterns, developing my own system for predicting trends based on both financial data and social observations. During my senior year, Professor Carson recommended me for an internship at a regional investment firm. There I met Leslie Montgomery, a senior analyst who had fought her way up in the male-dominated financial world of the 1980s and 90s. "Finance is still a boys' club," she warned me during my first week. "You will have to be twice as good to get half the recognition. Are you prepared for that, Lynn?" I thought of my father's dismissals, my brother's effortless success, and the years of proving myself. I have been preparing my whole life. Leslie took me under her wing, teaching me the practical side of client management and institutional investing that complemented my theoretical knowledge. More importantly, she showed me how to navigate professional spaces where men automatically assumed my incompetence. I graduated with highest honors in finance, my personal portfolio now worth $50,000, a secret nest egg no one in my family suspected. They attended the graduation ceremony, my father looking distinctly uncomfortable in the state school environment. "Congratulations," he said stiffly at the restaurant afterward. Though I suppose state school honors are not quite the same as Ivy League achievements. Andrew, now in his second year of law school at Harvard, at least had the grace to look embarrassed by our father's comment. When I announced I had accepted a position at a prestigious firm in New York, my father simply nodded. "Entry-level paper pushing will be a good start. Perhaps in time you can work your way up to something substantive." I left for New York the following week, my $50,000 portfolio and Leslie's recommendation my only real assets. The last thing my father said as I pulled out of the driveway was advice to keep expectations realistic. I smiled and waved already, knowing my reality would exceed anything he could imagine. My first apartment in New York was a tiny studio in Brooklyn with a shower so small I had to wash my hair with my elbows pressed against the walls. The hour-long commute to Manhattan's financial district ate into my sleep, but stepping into those gleaming towers each morning made every sacrifice worthwhile. I had arrived in the epicenter of global finance, and no one here knew I was supposed to be the disappointment. The investment firm placed me in an entry-level analyst position, part of a team of 20 new hires evaluating potential opportunities for senior advisors. Most of my colleagues came from Ivy League schools, their confidence bolstered by family connections and prestigious degrees. They initially dismissed me, the state school graduate with the unfashionable shoes and homemade lunches. 3 months into the job, we were asked to prepare investment recommendations for an upcoming pitch meeting. I identified a pattern in social media usage that suggested a particular platform was poised for explosive growth despite its current modest performance. My analysis combined traditional metrics with data about changing user demographics and engagement patterns. When I presented my findings in the team meeting, the senior executives exchanged skeptical glances. "That is an interesting theory, Ms. Harrison," said Mr. Phillips, the department head, "but we prefer investments with established performance records. Your social media hunch is too speculative for our client profiles." They selected the safe traditional options for the client presentation. That night, I used $10,000 from my personal portfolio to invest in the company they had rejected. 6 months later, that social media platform announced partnership deals with 3 major corporations, and their stock price increased by 300%. Meanwhile, the firm's recommended investments had yielded an average 8% return. I did not gloat or mention my personal investment. Instead, I continued developing my hybrid analysis method, combining traditional financial metrics with social trend analysis and technological innovation patterns. I kept 2 sets of investment recommendations, one for the firm's conservative approach and one for my growing personal portfolio. My breakthrough came when Garrett Thompson, a senior partner who managed high net worth accounts, overheard me discussing market trends with a colleague in the break room. Something in my analysis caught his attention, and he invited me to share my thoughts on several positions in his client portfolios. When 3 of my predictions proved remarkably accurate, he began consulting me regularly, though informally. After my personal portfolio outperformed the firm's official selections for the 4th consecutive quarter, he called me into his office. "You have an unusual approach, Audrey," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "Unconventional, but I cannot argue with results. I am assigning you to my team effective immediately." That promotion at 26 made me the youngest senior analyst at the firm with a small portfolio of clients and a substantial raise. I moved to a better apartment, invested my bonuses, and began building a reputation for accurate, if unorthodox, market predictions. Over the next 2 years, I developed an investment algorithm that quantified my analytical approach, combining traditional financial indicators with social media sentiment analysis, technological adoption rates, and cultural trend forecasting. My client portfolio consistently outperformed market averages by significant margins. My personal investments grew exponentially as I applied my methodology with greater freedom than the firm allowed. By 28, my net worth had crossed the $1 million mark, a fact I shared with no one, especially not my family. Visits home became increasingly rare, limited to major holidays and the occasional family event. My parents' house, once the center of my universe, now felt stifling and small. My father still introduced me as our daughter who works for a company in New York while speaking at length about Andrew's cases at his prestigious law firm. Still pushing papers in the big city, my father asked during one Christmas visit, as Andrew detailed his recent court victory. "Something like that," I answered, not mentioning that I now managed a $100 million portfolio for the firm's wealthiest clients. At 28, I made the decision that would transform my career. Using my market insights, industry connections, and $800,000 of my own money, I launched Innovative Capital, a boutique investment firm specializing in identifying emerging market opportunities others missed. The first year was brutal. I worked 18-hour days, slept on the office couch, and poured every cent into building the business. Traditional clients were skeptical of my youth, my gender, and my unconventional methods. For every 10 pitches, I might land one small account. The turning point came when Nathan Blackwell, a tech entrepreneur who had recently sold his company for $30 million, decided to trust me with $5 million for investment. He had read about my market predictions in an industry newsletter and recognized the same pattern recognition abilities that had made him successful. "The old guard is too attached to what worked yesterday," he told me during our first meeting. "I want someone who sees what will work tomorrow." His portfolio grew by 60% in the first year. Word spread, and suddenly Innovative Capital had a waiting list of clients eager for my perspective. I hired a team of analysts trained in my methodology, expanded to larger offices, and found myself managing over $500 million in assets by my 31st birthday. The Wall Street Journal feature came later that year, The Social Oracle of Wall Street: How Audrey Harrison's Unconventional Methods Are Rewriting Investment Rules. The article detailed my unique approach and remarkable success rate, accompanied by a professional photo of me in my corner office with the Manhattan skyline behind me. I kept a copy of that article locked in my desk drawer but never sent it to my parents. They still believed I worked for an investment company, with no idea that I owned the firm or that my personal net worth had crossed $15 million. I bought a luxury condo in Manhattan with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of Central Park, while they assumed I rented a nice apartment. Each Christmas, I downplayed my success, deflected questions about my career, and listened to my father praise Andrew's law practice, which had plateaued at a respectable but unexceptional level. I drove a rented economy car when visiting home, wore simple clothes, and never mentioned the celebrity clients or hedge fund managers who sought my advice. When the invitation arrived for my father's 60th birthday party, I knew the charade had gone on long enough. 10 years of invisible success of swallowing his dismissals while building an empire had created a weight I could no longer carry. It was time for the reckoning. The drive to my parents' house took 90 minutes from the city each mile, ratcheting up my anxiety. I had deliberately chosen to drive my actual car, a luxury vehicle worth more than my parents' mortgage, its sleek lines and distinctive logo impossible to miss. As I pulled into their driveway, the contrast between my life and theirs became visually apparent. Their modest colonial, once the palace of my childhood, now seemed small compared to my Manhattan condo. I sat in the car for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel, rehearsing what I might say when the inevitable questions came. The $15 million secret felt like it might choke me. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the expensive bottle of champagne from the passenger seat and walked to the front door. My mother answered, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "Audrey, you made it." She hugged me tightly, then held me at arm's length. "You look wonderful. So professional in that suit." What she did not say, but I could read in her expression, was surprise at the quality of my clothing. The simple black suit was designer, its perfect tailoring and fabric quality evident to anyone with an eye for such things. "Nice car," she added, glancing past me to the driveway. "Rental." I swallowed hard. "No, Mom. It is mine." Before she could process that information, my father appeared in the hallway behind her. "Audrey, good of you to come." His greeting was perfunctory, his eyes already moving past me to check the time on his watch. "Most of the guests will arrive at 7. I followed them into the living room, noticing how little had changed over the years. The same furniture, the same family photos, the same trophy shelf dominated by Andrew's achievements. My economics competition certificate had never made it onto that display. My brother Andrew and his wife Jennifer arrived 20 minutes later. Despite our complicated history, I had always liked Andrew himself, understanding that he had been as trapped by our father's expectations as I had been dismissed by them. We hugged, and he looked genuinely happy to see me. "The New York life must agree with you," he said. "You look great." My father immediately engaged Andrew in conversation about a recent case, leaving me and Jennifer to make small talk about their children. The pattern was so familiar it almost made me laugh. Some things never changed. As we gathered for pre-dinner drinks, my father held court in the living room, showcasing Andrew's recent victory in a minor corporate case as though he had argued before the Supreme Court. The opposing counsel never saw it coming, my father boasted to the small group of his university colleagues who had arrived. Andrew found a precedent from 1978 that completely invalidated their argument. When one of the guests politely asked what I did, my father answered before I could open my mouth. "Audrey works for an investment firm in New York. Still doing that stock thing, right?" I smiled tightly. "Something like that." The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of Professor Wilson, one of my father's oldest colleagues, accompanied by his wife Susan and their son James, who appeared to be in his early 30s. As my mother made introductions, James stopped abruptly when she reached me. "Audrey Harrison," he asked, his eyes widening. "From Innovative Capital." The room fell suddenly quiet. My father frowned slightly, looking between us with confusion. "Yes," I answered, my heart pounding. "Do we know each other?" James shook his head, a smile spreading across his face. "Not personally, but I just finished reading your profile in Forbes. The Wall Street wunderkind who revolutionized predictive investment strategies. Your firm's returns are legendary in financial circles." My father's face paled visibly. There must be another Audrey Harrison. James was already pulling out his phone. "No, it is definitely your daughter." I recognized her immediately. He turned the screen to show the group my Forbes cover photo, where I stood confidently in front of the New York Stock Exchange. "See, Audrey Harrison, the future of finance." My mother gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. "But you said you worked at an investment company." "I own an investment company," I corrected gently. "Innovative Capital. We manage just over $1 billion in assets now." Andrew stepped forward, genuine surprise and what looked like admiration on his face. "That is incredible, Audrey. Why did you never tell us?" My father had recovered enough to attempt damage control. "It must be exaggerated for the article. These business magazines like to create celebrities." James, oblivious to the family tension, continued enthusiastically. Exaggerated hardly. Her firm had the highest returns in the industry last quarter. My father's retirement fund manager has been trying to become a client for months, but I heard there is a waiting list now. The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken by my mother announcing dinner was ready. As we moved to the dining room, I could feel the weight of unspoken questions pressing down on all of us. Once seated, my father attempted to regain control of the narrative. Audrey has always been modest about her accomplishments. Perhaps now she can tell us more about this company of hers. The forced smile and patronizing tone snapped something inside me. 10 years of diminishment and dismissal crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. My company manages over $1 billion in assets, I said evenly, looking directly at my father. My personal net worth is approximately $15 million. I own a condo overlooking Central Park and sit on the boards of 3 financial industry organizations. I was named one of the 40 most influential people in finance under 40 last year. The stunned silence that followed was broken by my father's defensive question, "Why would you hide this from your family?" The dinner table confrontation I had imagined for years was finally happening, and with an audience no less. Years of suppressed emotion rose to the surface, threatening to overwhelm my carefully constructed professional composure. "Hide it," I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "I did not hide anything. You never asked. You were too busy praising Andrew to notice anything about my career beyond that stock thing in New York." My mother reached for my hand across the table. "Audrey, we had no idea." That was the problem, I continued, unable to stop now that the dam had broken. "You never thought to look past what you decided I was capable of when I was 12 years old. Dad labeled me never the bright one, and that became the family truth." My father's face flushed dark red. "That is not fair. I always supported your education. You refused to help pay for college because State University accepts anyone with a pulse," I reminded him. "You called my career entry-level paper pushing the last time I visited." Professor Wilson and his family looked deeply uncomfortable, while Andrew sat with his head bowed, staring at his plate. My mother had tears streaming silently down her cheeks. I stood abruptly, grabbing my purse and keys. I should go. This was a mistake. As I headed for the door, I could hear my father calling after me, but the roaring in my ears drowned out his words. I had imagined this moment for years, but the reality left me feeling hollow rather than vindicated. The $15 million secret was out, but revealing it had not brought the satisfaction I had expected. I made it to my car in the driveway, but my hands were shaking too badly to insert the key into the ignition. Tears blurred my vision as I gripped the steering wheel, trying to regain control of my breathing. The expensive leather interior of my luxury car suddenly felt confining rather than comforting. A knock on the passenger window startled me. Andrew stood there, his expression worried. After a moment's hesitation, I unlocked the door. He slid into the seat beside me, whistling low under his breath. "Nice car? Much better than my practical family sedan?" Despite everything, I found myself laughing through my tears. "It gets terrible gas mileage." We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "I did not know, Audrey. About the company, the success, any of it. But more importantly, I did not know how badly Dad hurt you all these years." "It does not matter," I said automatically, the dismissive response I had trained myself to give whenever anyone noticed the family dynamic. "It obviously does matter," Andrew countered gently. "You just blew up 15 years of carefully hidden success at Dad's birthday dinner. That suggests it matters quite a lot." He was right, of course. I stared out the windshield at the house where we had grown up, the windows glowing warm in the evening darkness. "Can I tell you something I have never told anyone?" Andrew asked, his voice unusually hesitant. "I have always been jealous of you." I turned to stare at him in disbelief. "Jealous of the family disappointment?" He nodded, a sad smile crossing his face. "You got away. You built your own life, followed your own path. I have been living the life Dad planned for me since I was 10 years old. Harvard undergraduate, Harvard Law, corporate firm, partner track. I hate corporate law, Audrey. I have hated it every day for the past 7 years. Then why stay, I asked, genuinely confused. Because disappointing Dad terrifies me. The thought of losing his approval feels like falling off a cliff. Andrew ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar from our childhood that it made my heart ache. You had the courage to walk away from his expectations. I never did. His confession shifted something fundamental in my understanding of our family. The golden child had been trapped in a gilded cage of expectations, while I had been free to find my own way, painful as that journey had been. We should go back inside, I said finally. Running away does not solve anything. I have been doing that for 10 years. Together we walked back to the house where our parents waited in tense silence, the birthday dinner in ruins. Professor Wilson and his family had tactfully excused themselves, promising to return another time. My father stood in the living room looking older and smaller than I remembered. My mother sat on the sofa, her makeup streaked from crying. I think I said carefully that we need to have a conversation that is about 15 years overdue. My father drew himself up, defensive posture already in place. I do not understand why you would hide your success from us. Were you trying to make us look foolish? No, Dad. I was trying to protect myself from exactly the reaction you had at dinner. Dismissal. Disbelief. The assumption that whatever I achieved must be exaggerated or unimportant. I never said your achievements were unimportant, he protested. You never acknowledged them at all, I corrected. When I won the economics competition in high school, you missed it for Andrew's debate tournament. When I graduated with honors, you called them state school honors, as if they meant less. When I got my first job in New York, you called it entry-level paper pushing. Andrew stepped forward. She is right, Dad. You have always measured both of us against your own narrow definition of success. For me, that meant pressure to excel exactly as you had. For Audrey, it meant constant reminders that she would never be the bright one. My father looked genuinely startled. I never said that. You did, my mother said quietly, surprising us all. At dinner, after she was rejected by your alma mater. You said those exact words. And I sat there and let you say them to our daughter. The silence that followed her statement was profound. My mother rarely contradicted my father, and never about his treatment of us. I failed you both, she continued, looking between Andrew and me. I let your father define success so narrowly that neither of you ever had a chance to just be yourselves. I gave up my own career, my art to support his, and then watched him do the same thing to both of you. My father sank slowly into his armchair, the weight of his wife's words visibly affecting him. I pushed because I wanted you both to succeed, he said finally. Everything I did was to ensure you had the best opportunities. No, I replied, finding strength in the simple truth. You pushed because you wanted us to succeed in ways that validated your own choices. My success came not because of your pushing, but despite it. I succeeded because I finally stopped trying to be what you wanted and started being who I actually am. I took out my phone and pulled up my company website, showing him the press coverage, the performance records, the industry recognition. This is what I built while you were dismissing my career as that stock thing in New York. I have clients who manage billion-dollar hedge funds. I advise tech entrepreneurs and Fortune 500 companies. And not once in 10 years did you ever ask me a single substantive question about my work. For the first time in my life, I saw something break in my father's expression, his perpetual certainty cracking to reveal doubt and perhaps regret. I did not know, he said, his voice uncharacteristically small. You did not ask, I corrected. Andrew placed his hand on my shoulder in silent support. Dad, I have something to tell you too. I hate being a corporate lawyer. I have always wanted to teach. I have been offered a position at the law school, and I am going to take it. My father looked up, startled. But your partnership track is making me miserable, Andrew finished firmly. Just like your narrow expectations made Audrey miserable for years. My mother rose and came to stand between us, taking both our hands. I think it is time we all started being honest with each other. Thomas, you and I need therapy both as a couple and as parents. We need to learn how to support our children's actual dreams, not the dreams we projected onto them. My father looked around at the three of us, united for perhaps the first time in standing up to his rigid expectations. I expected anger, dismissal, or defensiveness. Instead, he simply looked tired and suddenly much older than 60. I never meant to hurt either of you, he said finally. I thought I was doing what was best. I thought. You thought you knew better than everyone else, my mother finished gently. But you were wrong, Thomas. Look at what Audrey has accomplished without your guidance. Look how unhappy Andrew has been following it. Can we start over? My father asked the question, directed primarily at me. Can we try to build something different? It was not the sweeping apology I had sometimes imagined, but the vulnerability in the question was something I had never heard from him before. Not start over, I said carefully. But maybe start from here with the truth. All of it. That includes clear boundaries about how you speak to me, and acknowledging who I actually am, not who you decided I was. My father nodded slowly. I would like that. We moved to the dining room, the forgotten birthday dinner now cold on our plates. As we reheated food and poured fresh drinks, the conversation gradually shifted. For the first time, my father asked detailed questions about my investment methodology, listening with genuine interest to my explanations of how I combined traditional analysis with social trend forecasting. It is unconventional, he admitted, but clearly effective. You always did see connections others missed. That small acknowledgement 10 years too late but finally given felt like a door opening between us. Happy birthday, Dad, I said, raising my glass in a toast. To new beginnings. He met my eyes across the table, and for the first time in my adult life I saw what might have been pride in his gaze. To new beginnings, he echoed. And to the daughter I failed to see clearly for too long. It was not a perfect resolution, but it was a start. The wall of silence and dismissal had finally cracked, letting in the possibility of something better. 6 months after my father's birthday dinner revelation, we sat in a therapist's office in Boston, our 4th family session. The healing process had been neither quick nor easy, but change was happening in small, significant increments. My father had begun the difficult work of acknowledging his harmful patterns, particularly his tendency to value only one narrow type of achievement and to withhold approval as a form of control. In our 2nd session, he had broken down while recounting how his own father had treated him the same way. I became the very thing I hated, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. I measured both of you against impossible standards because that was all I knew. My mother had found her voice again, both literally and figuratively. She had reopened her art studio in the basement and begun teaching classes at the community center. Small changes at first, but her increasing willingness to express her own needs and opinions had transformed the dynamic between them. I enabled the favoritism for years, she acknowledged during one particularly difficult session. By staying silent, I became complicit in the harm it caused. Andrew had made the boldest external change, leaving his corporate law position to accept a teaching role at the university. The dramatic cut in salary had been offset by an equally dramatic increase in his happiness and well-being. The perpetual tension he had carried in his shoulders since childhood had finally eased. For the first time in my life, I am not performing for anyone's approval, he told me over coffee one afternoon. I am just doing what I love. My own journey had been more internal than external. I maintained clear boundaries with my parents, limiting visits and calls to what felt comfortable, while remaining open to the new relationships slowly forming. I created a scholarship fund for unconventional business thinkers at State University, specifically targeting students who showed market insight but might not excel in traditional academic metrics. Through my company, I established a mentorship program for young women in finance. Remembering how Leslie's guidance had been crucial to my early career, twice monthly I met with promising female analysts and shared both technical knowledge and strategies for navigating the still male-dominated financial world. My relationship with my parents gradually transformed into something authentic rather than performative. We would never have the easy closeness some families enjoyed, but the pretense and dismissal had been replaced by careful honesty. My father no longer introduced me as our daughter who works in New York, but instead spoke with genuine, if still learning pride about my financial innovations. 3 months after our therapy began, my father attended an industry awards ceremony where I received recognition for my firm's performance. Watching him from the podium, I saw him applaud with genuine enthusiasm, no longer threatened by a type of success different from his own. The following month, I attended my mother's first art showing in 20 years, purchasing her largest canvas for my office conference room. The abstract piece, titled Renaissance, symbolized her own rebirth as much as our family's healing process. As I reflected on our journey during a quiet moment in my Manhattan condo, I realized how much I had learned about different forms of intelligence and success. My father's narrow academic definition had nearly broken our family, but in pushing against it, I had discovered my own unique talents. The validation I had sought from him for so many years had ultimately needed to come from within. External recognition, even $15 million worth, could not fill the hole left by parental dismissal. Only internal confidence and self-acceptance could do that, a lesson I now shared with the young women I mentored. Our family healing remained a work in progress, not a finished journey with a tidy conclusion. There were still difficult moments. Old patterns that emerged in times of stress, wounds that reopened unexpectedly. But we now had tools to address these challenges directly, rather than retreating into established roles of golden child and disappointment. I created new traditions that honored everyone's unique gifts. For Christmas, I commissioned a family portrait where each of us was depicted with symbols of our passions and achievements. My mother with her art, my father with his books, Andrew with his students, and me with subtle references to my financial innovations. It hung in my parents' living room, a visual reminder of our commitment to seeing each other fully. The final breakthrough came during a dinner at my parents' home nearly a year after the confrontation. My father had invited a new colleague from the university, and as we gathered in the living room for drinks, he introduced me with words I never thought I would hear from him. "This is my daughter Audrey," he said, his voice carrying a note of genuine pride. "She founded an investment firm that is revolutionizing how we understand market behavior. Her approach combines economic principles with social insight in ways I never considered during my teaching career. We learn from her now." Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, my father walked me to my car. "I want you to know," he said hesitantly, "that I am proud of you. Not because of the money or the recognition, but because you had the courage to follow your own path even when I tried to discourage you." "Thank you," I said simply. The words I had longed to hear for decades finally spoken aloud. As I drove back to the city that night, I reflected on how authenticity had ultimately freed everyone in our family. My success had forced a reckoning that allowed Andrew to escape the golden cage of expectations. My mother had reclaimed her artistic voice. Even my father had found a more genuine way of relating to his children. I had written my own definition of success, one that incorporated financial achievement but extended beyond it to include authentic relationships, personal growth, and lifting others through mentorship. The $15 million secret had never been about the money at all, but about the courage to become fully myself despite every discouragement. The truth that emerged from our family's painful journey was both simple and profound. No one else can define your worth or potential. The labels others place on you have power only if you accept them. And sometimes the greatest success comes from proving wrong those who never believed you could succeed. Have you ever felt underestimated by someone whose opinion mattered to you? How did you respond to that challenge? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey of overcoming family expectations resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and redemption. Remember that your unique talents are valuable even when others fail to see them. Thank you for joining me on this deeply personal journey, and I wish you the courage to define success on your own terms.